Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Burke Brigade. It's Friday, August 18th, and I'm here with the lovely and beautiful and talented and intelligent and every other thing I can explain of the love of my life, Jennifer Burke. How are you, my lovely co-host?
After all those compliments, I am amazing.
All completely true, by the way. Welcome to the Burke Brigade. This is going to be episode 12, and we are brought to you by the Liberty Daily,
Your conservative alternative to the Drudge Report,
at thelibertydaily.com. You know, if you want to see a conservative alternative to the Drudge Report, not a populist or a nationalist aggregator, but, and I'm going to explain the difference here in just a little bit, but a conservative news aggregator where you will feel at home, where we try to put up stories that are relevant for the culture wars and to return America to its constitutional limitations so that we can truly make America great again. Mm-hmm. So let's start off today. Unless you are living under a hole, you realize that Steve Bannon, or Stephen K. Bannon, he was a senior White House political strategist for Donald Trump, was
with Trump through the campaign.
For a good part of the campaign. He, as you will recall, took over as campaign chairman when Paul Manafort got a little bit too close to the Russians, or it was revealed that he had been, for everybody's taste. But Steve Bannon is an interesting character. We don't know him personally, obviously, but being kind of in this business, if you will, we have heard things, both good and bad, but without getting into anything personal. Although I will say, if you listen to like Dana Lash,
right,
or Ben Shapiro, mm-hmm. There's actually not a lot of good. But a lot of that is like on a personal basis, personality, etc., etc. The thing, I don't know how you feel about this, but Bannon at least was anti-establishment.
Right.
Or apparently is anti-establishment. And I believe he pulled Trump to the right.
When he could. Because Trump's also been pulled to the left.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So there's not too many people left in the White House that are going to have any kind of conservative. Not that Bannon is a pure conservative. He's a nationalist populist. But he did have an effect of at least trying, I believe, to pull Donald Trump to the right. And he is gone. Now, Steve Bannon has already returned to his former leadership post at Breitbart, and he's already, here on Friday, chaired the company's evening editorial meeting, according to Breitbart. And here's what editor-in-chief Alex Marlow said: "The populist-nationalist movement got a lot stronger today. Breitbart gained an executive chairman with his finger on the pulse of the Trump agenda," whatever that happens to be. And over at Conservative Review on Friday, Chris Pandolfo wrote, and I'm quoting, "The only ones left are liberals. From the beginning of the Trump presidency, there were three warring factions in the White House, each vying for the president's favor to push the agenda in their direction. Jared and Ivanka Trump, along with Gary Cohn and Dina Powell, are the New York liberals President Trump brought with him from the finance world, inhabited by Goldman Sachs. Democrat donors they have several allies in the cabinet, including Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross Treasury Secretary Stephen, I can never say his name. Munchkin? Whatever his name is. And National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. So none of those people are conservatives.
No. I hate it when the media describes Ivanka as a conservative. Yes, she became a Republican for the general election so she could vote for her father. But remember, she couldn't vote for him in the primary because she was still a registered Democrat.
Yeah, that's
now,
right.
Andrew Breitbart is probably rolling over in his grave to hear the site that he founded not being called conservative, but populist nationalist. Andrew Breitbart was not a populist.
No, I don't think that he was. I believe, and I followed every speech he made. I was a fanboy. I watched every YouTube video. Mm-hmm. I read his book not once but twice, and he was definitely anti-establishment. But here is one good thing, perhaps, and this is Breitbart. He's the senior editor at large, I believe is his title. Joel Pollack was on that Meet the Press Daily edition on MSNBC with Chuck Todd, who we like to call Chuck Fraud.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Chuck Utah, but that's Mark.
Is that what he calls him? Anywho, Pollack basically threw down the gauntlet here, and he gave him a warning. So I'm just going to play it here. In other words, he's saying, hey, you do this, or Breitbart is going to turn on you like white on rice.
Pollack, welcome back to the show, sir. Good to be with you. Let me start. I know you talked about this with a colleague earlier, so I don't want to be totally repetitive on that. You had said your hashtag war. It sounded like you don't want it to be interpreted as Breitbart's declaring war on the White House, that this is more about your what Breitbart's philosophy has been, whether it's about the media, the Democrats, conventional Republicans. But is there going to be a war with this White House? I mean, it certainly, on one hand, you're saying no. On the other hand, you put your own warning out there, don't become Arnold Schwarzenegger.
That depends entirely on President Donald Trump. If he sticks to the issues on which he was elected, if he fulfills the promises that used to hang on Steve Bannon's wall in the West Wing, then I think you'll see positive coverage not just from Breitbart News, but from other conservative media outlets. However, if this becomes an Arnold Schwarzenegger situation where he swings to the left in an attempt to appease his critics in the media and the Democratic Party, then I think you will see a war.
So that sounds a little bit like a proverbial line in the sand.
Yep.
Because as you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger, when he was running for governor of California, ran as this, badass conservative. Remember when he was calling the people in the California legislatures economic gully men? The economic gully men. That was funny. But he turned out to govern like a leftist, like a liberal.
Maybe he was too busy screwing over his
nanny or his housekeeper, whoever it was. Could be.
Not screwing over. Anyway. And he did such a bang-up job, pun intended, as governor of California that his successor was none other than Jerry Moonbeam Brown. So a more kooky leftist liberal.
If anything, a so-called Republican. I think this is almost a 100% analogy. I mean, I hope it's not, but as far as like the possibility of what could become, I think this is a fair warning. Obviously, Breitbart was totally in the tank for Trump, even during the GOP primary. When
they elevated him during the GOP primary.
Yeah, I mean, to the point of being sycophantic. We could barely go there anymore because during the primary, when there were much more conservative choices in the race, when Ted Cruz still had a chance, with a track record of being a constitutionalist, they threw their hat in the ring hard for Donald Trump.
Under Steve Bannon. Not only throwing their hat in the ring for Donald Trump, but viciously attacking
Cruz.
Ted Cruz and others.
As I recall, the narrative was to try to paint Ted Cruz a globalist whose wife was at Goldman Sachs, so therefore she's evil. But yet Trump has filled darn near every position with someone from Goldman Sachs.
Right.
And that doesn't seem to matter anymore for some strange reason. But I do want Trump edged to the right, so I am applauding Breitbart's warning here. I think it's tough love. I think it needs to be done. And I think Trump should listen, because if he loses Breitbart, he's in big trouble. If he
loses Breitbart,
he's got no other cheerleaders.
He becomes Schwarzenegger, there is no 2020 for Trump.
Now, what Chuck Todd was referring to when he brought up Arnold Schwarzenegger was Joe Pollak wrote today on Breitbart, and I quote, "Like Trump, Schwarzenegger ran for high office as a celebrity outsider, promising to reform a corrupt, wasteful, and lethargic political system reaching across party lines." Doesn't that sound familiar?
It does.
When he took office in 2003 as governor of California, the, quote, Terminator, carried the hopes of conservatives in the Golden State who saw him as a vehicle for their ideas. That sounds familiar too. Even if he was not a doctrinaire conservative himself. Boy, does that sound familiar. The faltering California Republican Party looked to Schwarzenegger to reverse its long-term decline, and Republicans elsewhere saw his success as a model from which they could learn as they courted moderate swing state voters. Yeah, that really sounds familiar. But, I'm quoting again, after struggling with intense media criticism and after losing a key referendum on reforms to state government, Schwarzenegger gave up on his agenda and abandoned the political base that had brought him into office. He reinvented himself as a liberal, embracing policies such as California's controversial cap-and-trade program, which had zero effect on climate change, but has caused businesses, jobs, and middle-class families out of the state to states like our wonderful state here in Arizona or the great state of Texas, your home state.
Yes.
And so
Texas forever.
Texas forever. So he's saying, and I'll quote again what he told Chuck Todd: if this becomes an Arnold Schwarzenegger situation where he swings to the left in an attempt to appease his critics in the media and in the Democratic Party, then I think you will see war.
Then it'll be on like Donkey Kong.
And as you and I both know, honey, Andrew Breitbart was famous for tweeting that hashtag
war. Yes, it's probably no coincidence.
Against the establishment.
Right.
But yet, Donald Trump, to his discredit, has filled his White House with establishment stooges.
You know, and people talked about how long it would be, because it was an interesting mix of people he was putting together in the White House. How long that mix of people would last? Well, what is it? August, so 7 months? 7 months to boot anyone and, you know, on any side of the right out? I mean, is Jeff Sessions going to be next? Is he going to, now that he's written himself of Bannon, is he now officially going to go back after Jeff Sessions? And did you mention this, hon? That supposedly Bannon actually resigned on August 7th?
No, we hadn't even got to that yet. So he quit. It was announced that he was fired today, but he told Sarah Carter from Circa that he resigned 2 weeks ago. So then why was this just sitting there? But then it came out the narrative, well, President Trump is mad because Bannon went and gave an interview to this, this left-wing website, The American Prospect, where he bashed a lot of these globalist cucks within the Trump administration and disagreed with him on North Korea policy and a bunch of other things, and that's why Trump canned him. But that couldn't be if, in fact, he did resign 2 weeks ago,
right?
Because that interview hadn't even happened yet,
right?
So,
well, because Trump had to have it be about him appearing to be the one in power and control over Bannon, and not Bannon bailing.
Right. Now, it may work where this competition-style management in business may work under
the apprentice in the office.
Right. That may work to bring out the best of people when you're all, you're all going in the same direction, trying to make the company better.
Right.
The same policies, just
right. Who can implement them
and
the
work
best.
the hardest and the smartest, that kind of thing.
Come up with the best ideas to implement the policies.
But like Mark 3:25 says, if a house is divided against itself, that house cannot stand. A house divided against itself cannot stand. And Trump had all these people, playing to a different drum in the White House, and it's been utter and complete chaos.
It's been a disaster.
And then nothing's getting done. I mean, and I'm not saying there hasn't been some good things have been done, because there have been good things been done. In fact, there was a good thing done today, just to shift gears for a minute. Do you remember Obama's tyrannical, unconstitutional Operation Choke Point, where he basically, convinced these banks to cut off, any banking activity for gun stores? It was basically a backdoor way to
gun control.
Yeah, to gun control, to bastardize, to neuter the Second Amendment, which, as we all know, should not be infringed upon.
Right, because it protects us from a tyrannical government, among other things.
Right. It's a right. It's not an option.
It's a real right.
Yeah. So Jeff Sessions today, who was part of his administration, got rid of that, quote, misguided Operation Choke Point. Additionally, they've been declaring war on Obama's tyrannical regulations, which is great.
Yes.
I mean, it got to the point where who could start a business?
Nobody.
I mean, during his very controversial, or I didn't think it was nearly as bad as what other people did, but press conference on Tuesday, I believe it was, with Elaine Chao, Mitch McConnell's wife, ironically, where they're holding up that flow chart of the approval process that you have to go through to start a business. And the thing goes all the way to the ground.
Wow.
What was it, 19 different agencies?
Well, remember, the founder of Home Depot said he wouldn't be able to start Home Depot in the climate established under Barack Obama.
Yep, that's exactly right. So,
but I get, think about it too. Nancy Pelosi, remember when she talked about Obamacare, saying its praises, and all these entrepreneurs will be able to still have health insurance. So they're making it incredibly difficult if not impossible, for people to actually start a business, and at the same time working to get them hooked on government welfare.
Right. So that only the very rich can start businesses, because it takes a plethora.
The Democrats are the party of the rich, despite what they say.
Yes, it takes a plethora of attorneys and accountants, specialists, to get through all of that, bureaucratic gobbledygook. And, ultimately that's what they want. They want to enrich their attorney friends at the expense of, the little guy starting a small business. And it's absolutely shameful. So there is that. Was there anything else we're going to say about Steve Bannon?
Goodness.
Oh, there was.
What was it?
So I just want to touch on
conservative versus
on this a little bit, because conservatism is not to be confused on any day of the week with nationalist populism. Okay?
Despite what CNN says.
And nationalism and populism could really be two different things, and I don't want to get too intellectual because I'm probably not capable of being intellectual.
Oh, come on, honey. Don't sell yourself short.
But populism is very dangerous. And there's populism on the so-called right, and there's definitely populism on the left. But if you're just doing what's popular if you have no principles and you're just putting your finger in the wind, ultimately populism leads to tyranny.
Right.
Because as human beings, what do we want? We want free crap. We want free stuff. That's what we want. We want free stuff. I've got a relative, won't name the person, but you could write free on a pile of dog poop and she'd drive 100 miles to get it. Okay? You can't be a populist in a constitutional country because the limitations on the U.S. Constitution are not meant to be popular. They're intended to restrain the power and control of government. What is popular? Popular is we all sit on our asses and government gives us a free check. Now, that's popular, right? But is it constitutional? No. Is it right?
You just don't have a heart.
Yeah. Is it going to lead to a happy, productive, enriched society? No, it's not. So populism often leads to Venezuela.
Right.
Where some con man like Hugo Chavez comes in and starts promising everybody free stuff. And then what happens is eventually, like in the case of Venezuela, it was a very rich and wealthy country. They have
lots of oil,
immense, natural resources, and it's an absolute hellhole now because the government took over the private companies for the people.
Yes, in the name of justice.
Yeah.
So one of the things the people now have to be subjected to in Venezuela, their government, who controls the food supply and rations out the food, told that while Hugo Chavez sits on his fat,
well, he's dead.
Well, who is it then now?
Maduro.
Sorry, I keep seeing pictures of him. But Maduro, same thing. Sits on his fat, eating bonbons. And the people were told that if you're hungry, to eat some rocks. They were actually told
I'd forgotten about that.
Eat rocks if they were hungry.
Not eat cake.
They don't
eat
even
rocks.
have access to toilet paper.
I'm old enough to remember in the 1980s when the Soviet Union didn't have toilet paper. I mean, this is where socialism, i.e. communism, goes. And it doesn't lead to equality.
Prosperity.
Well, it definitely doesn't.
Definitely not.
Prosperity isn't allowed.
Right.
Prosperity is against the law, so nobody's motivated to do anything.
But everyone's equal.
Everyone's
gets the
equally
government
poor.
takes care of you.
Yeah, they give you, a kiblet every once in a while, but the majority of people, almost everybody, 98% of the people are absolutely impoverished, and then you have the 1 or 2 percenters that Bernie Sanders always rails against. They're the ones in government that actually own everything,
right,
and profit and skim so much off the top that there's nothing left for anyone else. That's why in North Korea, the only fat person I've ever seen in North Korea, regardless of all the footage you see on TV, is their fat ass leader.
Right.
He's the only overweight person in the damn country.
Again, sitting around eating bonbons.
Right. So that's populism. Now, what is nationalism? Nationalism is not constitutionalism because we are a federal republic. We have sovereign states with states' rights. Under nationalism, under pure nationalism, states' rights go away. They are subordinated to what's in the nation's best interest. So it's not the people anymore.
Good explanation, hon.
And it's not the right of the individual, which is what America is based on. It is based on what is good for the nation. Now, that leads to the Hitlers, the Mussolinis of the world, or at least it runs the risk of doing so. Am I comparing Donald Trump to any of those people? No, I'm not. But under nationalism, it leads to a far push, not to the right, but to the left.
Right.
More and more and more and more government.
Yes, it leads to big government.
Right.
Government will take care of you.
Yes, and it's what is best for the nation over individual rights and over state rights. And we have a constitution where the states created the federal government, not the other way around. The states delegated a few enumerated powers listed in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, and they said, look, these things you can do on a national level. Everything else is ours.
Right.
It's ours or the people, the individual, according to the 10th Amendment. So whether it's populism, whether it's nationalism, they are very dangerous. So let's move on here, but my bottom line is Bannon is not a conservative. Trump is not a conservative. But if some, maybe Breitbart or Bannon or somebody can move Trump from going completely off the deep end and going like Arnold Schwarzenegger and going far, far, far left, that is maybe as good as we're going to do in this administration. Because, and I don't want to be rude here, but we could have had Ted Cruz.
Yeah. Well, and the person who is the greatest influence, even when Steve Bannon was chief strategist, whatever his title was, is Ivanka Trump.
Who's a liberal Democrat.
Who registered as a Republican simply so she could vote for her father. And remember her speech that so many people cheered during the RNC. It could have been a speech given by Hillary or Chelsea Clinton. So it makes you wonder what is going to happen now with Donald Trump being surrounded by not just liberals, but mostly New York liberals, New York values.
Now, remember when Ted Cruz caught so much heat for criticizing Trump for his New York values? Mm-hmm. Everybody that got on Cruz's case for that owes him a major apology. Yep. Because we now see what New York values are.
Yep.
They're not constitutionalists. They're liberals. In New York, the so-called conservatives are liberal. There's no such thing as a conservative in New York.
Right.
Other than somebody living, on the other side of the state or something.
Right.
I mean, yeah, there might be a couple here or there, but, they walk down the street, with their head in rock-kicking position, and they don't speak out because they get blasted. So, New York, their own governor said conservatives there aren't welcome. A couple years ago, right? You told them to leave the state. Which, if you're conservative in New York, I highly recommend it. Come here to Arizona, go to Texas, get out of that, leftist hellhole. Absolutely. So, hate groups, so-called hate groups, and this is another dangerous attack on the First Amendment when you have an arbiter declaring so-called hate groups, and it's basically, and this arbiter happens to be a communist front group.
Right, who is given a status by leftist news organizations like CNN, who want to claim that they're the most trusted name in news, when in actuality recent surveys found that they're the least trusted name in news. But the Southern Poverty Law Center, they're a leftist communist front group who
masquerades. They masquerade as a civil rights organization.
Masquerades as a civil rights organization, nonpartisan.
Yeah, right.
Nonpartisan. So they put out their yearly list of hate groups. And in their list of hate groups, they have designated any Christian organization who believes in traditional biblical marriage and family as a hate group.
In other words, marriage.
Right.
Real marriage.
In other words, marriage. If you don't support the LGBTQBACD or whatever the hell it is nowadays, because they keep adding alphabets onto it, if you don't support that, then you are considered a hate group. The Alliance Defending Freedom, who has stood up for many Christians who have been attacked, been sued, or whatever, for simply wanting to stand by their Christian beliefs, freedom of religion, They've never done a violent act in their life. They were designated by the Southern Poverty Law Center as a hate group.
Right.
And remember, when I was reading this article by in FaithWire, before I got to this paragraph, I thought to myself, yeah, Family Research Council. Remember back when someone entered their building and tried to shoot them because leftist organizations were calling them a hate group because they believe in traditional biblical marriage. Thank goodness the guy didn't succeed, but he tried.
Right.
So, CNN, who always wants to talk about, Donald Trump and, what are his words going to lead to? Blaming him for anything anyone does because of a tweet he said 5 years ago. They gave credence to the Southern Poverty Law Center's list of hate groups by publishing it in an article. The Southern Poverty Law Center's list of hate groups. And they say, the Alabama-based nonprofit activist group tracks civil rights and hate crimes and defines a hate group as an organization with beliefs or practices that attack or malign an entire class of people, typically for their immutable characteristics.
Well, doesn't that make them a hate group?
Right.
Because they hate Christians.
They do hate Christians.
They hate all Christians. They hate. All Jews, they hate. Anything that stands for the biblical view of marriage, which has been that way for thousands and thousands of years, they hate. So capitalism, they hate. The U.S. Constitution, they hate.
They hate.
So why aren't they a hate group?
Right. Well, because they're obviously not going to designate themselves. And listen to the way CNN spins this. Some critics of the SPLC says that their activism biases how it categorizes groups.
Oh, no kidding.
And actually say that the list compromises their safety, citing an attack by a gunman. No, an attack by a leftist at the FRC 5 years
one of their
ago,
little demons,
who chose that as their target, as his target, because of the Southern Poverty Law Center. So
because they triggered him, and that's what they're doing. That's what they want to do.
Yep.
They want these Antifa, America-hating communists. They're basically publishing this list, and they're saying, here is your marching orders. Here is your marching orders. Go attack these people. So every Christian group in America is on there.
Yeah, the Eagle Forum.
Phyllis Schlafly
is on the list.
Because she's a conservative
Oath Keepers.
Christian. Right.
Oath Keepers, former and current military and police officers who said, I swore an oath to the Constitution and I will defend it.
How about this one? The Constitution Party.
The Constitution Party.
The Constitution
yes.
Party.
You are hateful if you believe in the Constitution.
Of course you are. We can't have that nasty old Bill of Rights.
No, it's shameful. It's absolutely shameful.
It's shameful.
And CNN should be ashamed of themselves. And this is precisely why they are the least trusted name in news, despite the tagline that they erroneously use, because they push this leftist propaganda.
They're promoting violence against Christian, constitutional conservatives. By the way, that's what we are. Christian, constitutional conservatives.
Yeah, gun owners,
if you haven't guessed.
Gun owners of America who believe in the Second Amendment, they're a hate group.
Yeah, that's a hate group. Yeah.
Yeah, I do not
Tea Party patriots.
Let me do a search for Antifa. Oh, Antifa, not on there.
Huh. That's amazing. They just go around trying to burn up American cities.
Muslim
no hate there.
Not on there.
No hate there. Because
not on there.
That's the military wing of the Democrat Party. The other one's a Muslim Brotherhood terrorist organization. They're not on there. Their hearts are full of love.
No, not at all.
So when you have an arbiter like this, a communist front group, determining what hate is, and then you have a major media organization like the Communist News Network, CNN, giving their blessing to it, it's absolutely shameful. And this is another thing that Trump deserves credit for. We bashed him some tonight, but we totally agree with him bashing the media.
Yes.
Maybe his tactics are a little harsh, but they utterly deserve it.
They do.
And calling them fake news, look at this crap.
Look at that.
This is why he can get away justifiably with calling them fake news.
Right, and I know this is a different thing, but this is tying into the media as fake news. That was it Jim Sciutto? Former Obama lackey, who CNN does not disclose as a former Obama lackey. He masquerades as a journalist with CNN.
Right.
Who added Charlottesville. Charlottesville. The guy who drove his car into Charlotte into a crowd in Charlottesville, and a poor woman lost her life, to the terrorist attacks in Europe. He added that to the list.
You know, I think we should play that again. It's so shameful. We played it last night. It's not very long, but the skinny is that Wolf Blitzer and this Jim Sciutto, the Obama operative, are. No, just listen. It's absolutely disgusting. It's shameful. He is an embarrassment to journalism. We've got this on thepolitistic.com. I wrote this. This story has been shared in social media 7,000 times. And in there, I call for Wolf Blitzer to be fired over this. Absolutely shameful reporting. Listen to this.
The point I would make, Wolf, is just this note that in light of the uproar of the last several days, 5 days apart, you have white supremacists in Charlottesville use a vehicle to kill, and here you have attackers at least following the modus operandi of terrorists using vehicles apparently to kill as well. And those shared tactics that should be alarming.
Yeah, and there will be questions about copycats. There will be questions if what happened in Barcelona was...
No, Wolf, there aren't going to be questions about copycats. Nobody would think that, Wolf. Nobody.
You know, all the times, in Ohio State University, a Muslim was only stopped from killing more people because of the concrete barriers that were there. Remember the guy who drove into a crowd in Times Square, New York,
right?
And then some excuse was made for it that I don't know that I
London
believe.
Bridge attack. That was in
the
June.
London Bridge attack. The
Stockholm,
Nice attack.
Sweden.
I don't recall back then. I recall Wolf Blitzer and CNN trying to make light of it. We don't know.
Nice, France,
we'll never know.
Berlin.
Not. They're using the tactics of ISIS. They're using the tactics of ISIS.
Right. If anything, the white supremacists copied the tactics of ISIS. It's not the other way around, you utter, shameful buffoon. Listen to more of this absolute idiot.
Is at all a copycat version of what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia, even though there may be different characters, different political ambitions. They use the same killing device, a vehicle going at high speed into a large group of pedestrians.
So this terrorist in Barcelona, Spain, was a copycat of some guy in Charlottesville. Seriously, Wolf Blitzer still has a job. No wonder you're called fake news, CNN.
No kidding. And so all the people that are going to be murdered in Chicago this weekend, are those going to be copycat murders? You know, like somebody murders somebody with a gun, so then someone else copycats them and goes out and kills them with a gun?
It's just absolutely
Or is it because,
ridiculous.
Chicago is a moral sewer? Could that be it?
Right. No respect for life.
Absolutely, absolutely shameful. He is a disgrace to journalism. And, oh, by the way, a major American company got shook down today and donated a bunch of money to the Communist Front Group called the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center. Would you like to tell us who that was?
Yeah, for all of you...
Bowed to the false progressive god of political correctness.
For all of you Apple lovers, when I'm sitting here on my iPhone...
You're one of them.
What are you going to do?
I know.
Apple and Google, they're
just
equally bad. Apple donated $1 million to the Southern Poverty Law Center. Claims Trump equated Nazis and those who opposed them. They're giving a major pass to the very group, Antifa, who have burned down cities. But caused tens of millions of dollars of damage.
Right.
Even in downtown Berkeley and in other places around America. So, who is this guy? The president of the SPLC? No, Apple Apple CEO Tim Cook,
who's a homosexual.
I believe
not that
Apple,
matters, but I want to point that out.
They matched donations for employees 2 for 1 and allowed iTunes users to directly support the work of the SPLC. I believe Apple has led by example, and we're going to keep doing that. We have always welcomed people from every walk of life to our stores around the world and showed them that Apple is inclusive of everyone. In the wake of the tragic and repulsive events in Charlottesville, we are stepping up to help organizations who work to rid our country of hate. Where were you when Black Lives Matter were burning cities down? Where were you when Black Lives Matter were marching in the streets,
funding it,
calling for the murder of police officers? Where were you when Antifa were destroying businesses and buildings and cars and all kind of things in cities? I didn't hear you calling them hate.
No,
I didn't hear you accusing
love.
them of hate and being hateful. So shame on you, Apple. I'm serious. If Google were a better alternative, I would sell my iPhone
or Microsoft
and
anybody else.
and my Apple Watch tomorrow, because that is ridiculous.
It's absolutely disgusting. Just terrible, terrible people. And you know what? He's not doing it because he's morally virtuous.
Right.
He's doing it because he doesn't want them sending their Marxist thugs to attack the Apple headquarters.
To shake him down.
Yeah. He doesn't want violence, and he's like, I will allow them, I will be their little bitch and allow them to shake me down because I don't want their violent thugs coming around and breaking our windows. That's basically what it is. So, more from the loving left today. The Lincoln Memorial Civil War era monument was basically destroyed today in the loving Marxist utopia of Chicago. It's disgusting. The Washington Times has this story. Abraham Lincoln Monument torched in Chicago. Quote, an absolute disgraceful act. And what these communists are trying to do, it's got nothing to do with race.
Nothing.
It's got nothing to do with fascism. It
has
got
nothing
everything
to do with quote-unquote equality.
Right. It's got everything to do with destroying America's heritage, destroying America's history. This is what all communist regimes do. They have to destroy everything. Next will be the books. They'll destroy the books. So, this really makes me not want to get any more books on Amazon that are Kindle.
Yeah, because what they'll do is
take
them off your Kindle.
Yeah,
because they've done it before.
Yeah, this is a hate
off.
book. They got hate groups, hate speech. Now they're going to have hate books. Then it'll be hate broadcasters. It'll be Mark Levin's gone. Rush Limbaugh be gone.
This is Obama's legacy.
Right.
This is what he started. Why is the media not going to him and wanting him to comment about the burning down, the defamation, the vandalism of these historic things? Ask yourself that question. He's probably sitting back with a with a beer in his hand and whatever, laughing, because this is what his racialist, arsonistic, is that a word?
It is now.
Rhetoric has led to.
Right.
He was never held accountable for his divisiveness.
But these are all Chicago thug, Saul Alinsky tactics. They can't win in the arena of ideas. They can't effectively argue their communist ideas, which lead to death, destruction, and poverty wherever they have been done throughout human history in any freaking nation on earth. They can't. And so, therefore, what they do is demonize and vilify people, and they label them. Well, you know what? I'm labeling them too. I will label them as America-hating communists, and I recommend you do exactly the same. Don't call them progressive. There's nothing progressive about them. It is Karl Marx, Saul Alinsky, anti-American hate.
I have to share this cartoon that a friend of mine posted on Facebook. I think the artist's name is S. Kelly. Kind of looks like, I can't really read it the way he has.
It's not R. Kelly, is it?
No, not R. Kelly.
That would be a different cartoon now, wouldn't it?
There are two guys talking to each other. And one guy looks like a hippie dude, says, "The left will not permit thought or speech that contradicts what we believe is acceptable. We will destroy property when we determine it advances our just cause. We will cleanse history of all that we find offensive." And the other guy asks, "Why would you want to do all that?"
Oh my gosh.
Hey, I'm telling a story.
Quiet, guys. I was just going to say, we've almost made it through this podcast
without
our
dog
little
barking.
Furry assistance helper. Ray, zip it.
So the other guy asks,
Come here,
"Why
Ray.
would you want to do all that?"
Come here.
And the hippie says, "To suppress fascism, of course."
Oh, yeah, fascism with fashion. These people, and you'll notice, nobody in the media will ask them, "Can you define fascism?" They won't be able to. They don't even know what the damn word means.
No, they don't know what it is. No, but now they're being basically portrayed by the media as heroes. They were condemning hate. Really, I said it the other day. If the neo-Nazis would have just had their little bitty demonstration or whatever, it would have been all about nothing. It was the people coming up to do the counter-protest and then getting in their faces that led to violence from both sides. I saw both sides swinging punches. Yes, did some neo-Nazi drive his car into a crowd? Yes, but then I read stories that he actually was an Obama supporter. I don't know if that's true or not.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
He was an Obama supporter, and shockingly enough, he was an Occupy Wall Street agitator.
Yeah, so I'm supposed to
So he ain't one of us.
Yeah, I'm supposed to believe that he was a Trump supporting person. I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. And note how anytime a Muslim commits a terrorist attack, we were told by Obama over and over again and his lackeys in the media, "Oh, you can't blame the entire religion for the actions of one." But every single person who's not a rabid communistic leftist is to blame for the actions of this guy who is actually a rabid communistic leftist.
Right.
Posing as something else.
Let's circle back, because as Jennifer was talking about the organizations at the Communist Front Group, the Southern Poverty Law Center, who wants to keep everybody in poverty, their so-called hate list included 917 organizations. I mean, are there even 917? Jeez Louise. 917 organizations, and these conservative groups. This is in the Washington Times. I just saw this. They are pushing back. They are alarmed to be included on their hate map. And what they've done is they've aligned, like the Alliance Defending Freedom, like Jennifer talked about, the Family Research Council, which is founded by James Dobson, along with these Aryan Nation skinhead groups. It's just absolutely shameful. So, here's what some respondents to this have said. Let me catch my bearings here. "I am shocked that CNN would publish such a false report on the heels of the Charlottesville tragedy," said Matt Staver, Liberty Council's founder and chairman. "To lump peaceful Christian organizations which condemn violence and racism in with the KKK, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists is offensive. This is the epitome of fake news and is why people no longer trust the media." Bingo!
Right. And this is not only on the heels of Charlotte, but
Charlottesville?
Charlottesville, but Steve Scalise is still in long-term recovery. I mean, the way the leftist media has demonized Republicans, the things that they have said about the Republican Party and Republican leadership, led directly to an attempt on the lives of Republican congressmen who were simply practicing for a softball game.
And specifically, he had a list in his pocket with members of the House Freedom Caucus.
Yep.
So he was going after the solid constitutional conservatives, Steve Scalise, who is not one of those, but nevertheless caught a bullet very tragically, and this progressive terrorist was inspired by America-hating communists, Bernie Sanders, a Soviet-style socialist who honeymooned in the Soviet Union.
Ray, stop.
Ray gets ticked when I talk about this. And so he's our corgi. But the deal is, I lost my train of thought.
Soviet-style socialists.
Yeah? Oh, so Bernie Sanders, you look at this guy, James, what was his name? This guy that... Hodgkinson, this progressive terrorist. We wrote about this on the Politistic. You can't do it now, but you could find it out. His Facebook page, he was a mainstream, if you can call it that, Bernie Sanders supporter. He wasn't a radical. An associate that worked with him on the Bernie Sanders campaign described him as a passionate Bernie Sanders supporter.
He loved him some Bernie.
He wasn't even one of these Antifa guys.
No, and how many
times... He was
times...
just your typical run-of-the-mill Bernie Sanders leftist.
And how many times did we see Bernie Sanders interviewed within the week or two after his supporters' attempt on the lives of Republican congressmen? Was Bernie actually asked about it?
Right.
He really wasn't. And then finally, some news organizations started asking him some kind of basic question that he just spouted off an answer to, and that was it. And that assassination attempt came, a week or two after another Bernie Sanders supporter stabbed people on a train in Oregon?
Yeah,
he was never asked about
right.
that either.
That's right. That's not a problem. That's not hate at all.
We can't
You know what?
blame
And
Bernie
these
for
organizations
that.
like CNN, they support this. I mean, shamefully, Chris Cuomo, was praising this Antifa communist hate group as being the moral equivalent. You want to talk about painting moral equivalencies? Painted them as brave and as esteemed as our World War II soldiers that fought the Nazis in World War II.
Yeah, they're against hate. Antifa is against hate. Please.
So here's another response to the SPLC's hate map. Tom McCluskey, former Vice President of Government Affairs at the Family Research Council, took to Twitter to say, "Thanks for the reminder, CNN, of this inaccurate map. Last time I saw one of my friends got hit with a bullet. Real responsible reporting." Boom. Freaking real. Well, I think we've came pretty much to the end of our broadcast here. Do you have anything for the good of the country, my dear, to say tonight, other than what you've already done so brilliantly?
I don't think so. Just, guys, it's going to be a lot going on over the next couple of days with Bannon not only leaving but rejoining Breitbart. Is Trump going to lose his cozy relationship with that organization that has gone to bat for him, even when they had to twist the facts in order to go to bat for him? It'll be an interesting time to see how that transition pans out.
It will, because some of his most loyal supporters, like Ann Coulter, the author of the book, she wrote during the 2016 presidential campaign, entitled, which I think is a little blasphemous myself.
Yeah, totally.
It's just over the top sycophancies, if that's a word. "In Trump We Trust" was the title of the book. She was outraged over the firing, and I don't think the firing is good either. Like I said, I think Bannon might have been the only one in there pushing Trump to the right, from being totally controlled by the liberal Democrats and the globalists that he has surrounded himself with. No one else did that.
Nope.
Nobody else can be blamed about that. You can kiss Trump's butt all you want. He's the one that named these people. Nobody else. No conservative, no right-winger, Donald Trump. So she tweeted today, "Steve Bannon out. Media is the most powerful branch of government." So she's obviously, accusing him of bowing to the media gods.
It had nothing to do with the media. If memory
Well,
serves
it might
me,
have a little bit. I mean, they put a lot of pressure on Bannon. They were saying, Bannon's a racist.
well, I know,
Bannon's a white
but
supremacist.
one would think that if Trump really wanted him around, that he'd go to bat for him. But
well, yeah, you would think. So therefore, he didn't. So he did.
Exactly.
He caved.
So right when the Trump presidency started, weren't there stories out how Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, was trying to push Bannon out?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Took
He's
him
at war
7
with
months,
Bannon.
but he finally did it.
He's at war with H.R. McMaster, who has said all these politically correct things about Islamic terrorism, describing it in such a way that you would think it was Barack Obama. Mm-hmm. It's really despicable. So Coulter, back to Coulter, she asked, who will the media decide Donald Trump has to fire next?
I bet you the last conservative...
In Trump we trust.
The last conservative that's in that White House is...
Ronald Reagan.
No, right now.
Oh, right
Mike
now?
Pence.
Well, Mike Pence and maybe Kellyanne is, I think, conservative.
Sorry,
I don't know.
sorry, Trump, you can't fire your vice president.
A hired gun. Right, but Mike Pence is not in the cabinet, and Mike Pence is a relatively solid conservative, but he's not exactly, I wouldn't put him as a firebrand fighter.
Oh, he's not a firebrand fighter. I'm just talking
look how
about
he backed
existence.
down in Indiana with the...
I'm just talking about existence.
Right. Yeah, and...
It's a voice in whatever capacity, volume, whatever.
Let me ask you a question here, just honest to God, and we're about ready to wrap up. Do you think it can continue in this chaos for another 3.5 years?
No, it's astonishing that it's only been 7 months. No, it can't.
What do you think's going to happen?
It can't. I don't know that Trump... personally, I think Trump's eventually going to resign.
I don't see him as being a quitter. But I also... Here's what I think could happen. When 2018 approaches, if it starts getting till June, July, August, and things are insane as they are right now, or they get even more insane as they are right now, and Trump becomes a political liability to the Republican Party, you're already starting to see them turn on him. They've already, McConnell, who Trump has gotten in bed with, was a bad idea. He should have just crushed McConnell like a grape. But he got in bed with McConnell, and I think McConnell has been underhanded from day one. He's certainly no conservative.
No.
I mean, and the conservatives would love to be Trump's friend. Instead, he kicks him in the teeth.
Exactly.
Goes for the globalist cucks. It's very, very disappointing. But not to get off track, I think if he becomes a political liability, you can see the rhino wing of the party join with the Democrats and try to impeach him over something. They'll invent something. I mean, impeachment is largely, a political decision. So that is a wrap, my love, on this beautiful Friday evening, August, the 18th, a Friday evening here. We have gone about an hour, and we went a little bit earlier tonight. We want to watch a Seahawk preseason game we taped. And so we're going to sign off right now, but we really, really, really appreciate you guys tuning in to the Burke Brigade, which, by the way, is brought to you by...
The Liberty Daily, your conservative alternative to the Drudge Report.
At thelibertydaily.com. Check it out. God bless everybody. We have enjoyed having you listening. We really appreciate it.
God bless America. Go Seahawks.